I was prepared to watch my marriage die on a screen. I had spent 3 nights installing hidden cameras in our house, telling myself I wasn't doing it because I was jealous. I was doing it because I needed the truth. For 6 weeks, my wife, Sarah, had been coming home late. She stopped leaving her phone on the kitchen counter. She started taking calls outside. She had begun smiling at messages that she wouldn't explain. And whenever I asked what was wrong, she'd give me the same answer. I'm tired, Mark. But there was something in her eyes that made those words feel like a lie. So, one Friday night, after Sarah told me she was going to help her sister, I sat alone in my car outside our house and watched the camera feed on my phone. My hands were shaking. I hated myself for doing it. But I hated not knowing even more. At 9:17 p.m., Sarah walked through the front door. At 9:19, someone knocked. My stomach dropped. A man entered. He was tall, wearing a dark jacket and carrying a large brown bag. Sarah hugged him. I nearly dropped my phone. For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. There he was. Another man in my house. Another man's arms around my wife. My mind filled in every terrible possibility. Then something happened that I never expected. Sarah stepped back, wiped her eyes, and said, "Did you bring everything?" The man nodded. "I brought enough for the whole week." He placed the bag on the kitchen table. Sarah opened it. Inside were canned foods, medicine, blankets, and several children's books. I stared at the screen. What was going on? Then the man reached into his pocket and pulled out a photograph. Sarah looked at it and immediately began crying. I leaned closer to my phone. The photograph showed a little boy. He couldn't have been more than 7. Sarah touched his face through the photograph. His fever finally broke, the man said. I felt the anger draining out of me, replaced by confusion. Then Sarah whispered something that changed everything. Mark can't know. My heart stopped again. She was talking about me. The man nodded. Are you sure? Yes, she said. If he finds out what I've been doing, he'll try to help. And we can't let him. I stared at the screen. Can't let me help. Why? The man picked up the bag. Sarah, you're going to destroy yourself doing this. I don't care. You've already sold your jewelry. I can buy more jewelry. You've borrowed money from 3 people. I'll pay them back. And your husband? Sarah's face crumpled. He already works 2 jobs. He thinks I'm wasting money. He thinks I'm keeping secrets because I'm leaving him. The man sighed. He loves you. I know. Then tell him. Sarah shook her head. No. Not until I know the boy is safe. I sat frozen in my car. The boy. What boy? And why was my wife secretly spending our money to help him? I drove home before they could notice me outside. When Sarah came into the bedroom later, I pretended to be asleep. She quietly slipped into bed. For nearly an hour, neither of us spoke. Then, in the darkness, she whispered. I'm sorry, Mark. I opened my eyes. Sorry for what? She froze. I turned toward her. Who is he? Her face went white. What? The man who came tonight. She sat up. You saw. I installed cameras. Silence. Her eyes filled with tears. You thought I was cheating. What was I supposed to think? She covered her face. I wanted to tell you. Then tell me now. She stared at me for a long moment. Do you remember the boy who used to wait outside the grocery store near my office? I nodded slowly. The one who sold flowers? Yes. His name is Noah. Sarah explained that. Noah lived with his mother in an apartment barely large enough for one family. His father had disappeared years earlier. His mother worked cleaning houses but had recently been diagnosed with a serious illness. Noah had started selling flowers after school because there was no money for food. Sarah had first noticed him during a rainy afternoon. She had bought every flower he had. Then she discovered his mother was sick. She began helping them quietly. The man on the camera was David, a social worker who had been trying to get Noah and his mother into a temporary family shelter. But there was a problem. They needed money for medication, food, transportation, and eventually a stable place to live. Sarah had been paying for it herself. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. She looked down. "Because you were already working so hard. Sarah. You were taking overtime. You were exhausted. Every time I looked at you, I saw how hard you were trying to keep us afloat." Her voice broke. I didn't want to become another burden. I didn't know what to say. Then she reached for my hand. "There was one more reason." "What?" "Your mother." I stiffened. Sarah knew how much my mother had struggled before she died. She continued softly. "When I saw Noah, I remembered how your mother used to tell us that kindness means nothing if you only give when it's convenient." Tears filled my eyes. My mother had said those words many times. Sarah squeezed my hand. I couldn't walk away. I looked at her. For weeks, I had imagined betrayal. Instead, my wife had been sacrificing herself for a child who wasn't ours. But there was still something that bothered me. "How much money have you spent?" She hesitated. "Sarah. Almost $12,000. I sat up. $12,000. She nodded. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I knew you'd help." "That's exactly why you should have told me." She started crying. "I was afraid. Of me. Of losing what little we had." I took a deep breath. Then I said the words I should have said from the beginning. "You're not carrying this alone anymore." The next morning, we met David and Noah. Noah was sitting on a hospital chair beside his mother. He looked terrified. When he saw Sarah, he smiled. Then he noticed me. He immediately moved closer to his mother. I knelt in front of him. "I'm Mark." He nodded. "Sarah's husband." He nodded again. I smiled. "She told me you're pretty good at selling flowers." A tiny smile appeared. "I sell the best ones." "Then I think I need to buy some." He looked at his mother. "How many?" "All of them." For the first time, Noah laughed. And something inside me broke open. The cameras were gone from our house within a week. I didn't need them anymore. Trust couldn't be built through surveillance. It had to be built through honesty. Sarah and I worked together to raise money for Noah's family. Friends helped. Neighbors helped. Sarah's co-workers helped. Even strangers donated after. David shared their story with a local community group. Within 2 months, Noah's mother received the treatment she needed. A local nonprofit helped them move into a safe apartment. And Noah went back to school full-time. One Saturday afternoon, I found him sitting at our kitchen table, carefully drawing something on a piece of paper. "What are you making?" I asked. He handed it to me. It was a picture of 4 people holding hands. There was Noah, his mother, Sarah, and me. At the bottom, in crooked handwriting, he had written, "Family doesn't always start with blood. Sometimes it starts with someone caring." I couldn't speak. Sarah came up behind me. She read the words and began crying. Noah looked confused. "Is it bad?" I shook my head and pulled him into a hug. "No, buddy." I held him tightly. "It's the best thing anyone has ever written for me." That night, after Noah and his mother left, Sarah and I sat together on the porch. "I owe you an apology," I said. She looked at me. "For what?" "For believing the worst about you." She smiled sadly. "I understand why you were scared. I shouldn't have installed those cameras. No. I should have trusted you." She reached for my hand. "And I should have trusted you enough to tell you the truth." We sat quietly. For the first time in months, there was no suspicion between us. Only honesty. Only peace. I once thought the men in my Wife's house was the beginning of the end of my marriage. I was wrong. He was the beginning of something else. He introduced us to a little boy named Noah. Noah reminded us that people don't always need saving in grand, dramatic ways. Sometimes they need someone to notice, someone to care, someone to say, "You don't have to face this alone." And sometimes, when we open our hearts to help another person, we discover that we were the ones who needed saving all along.